I was 13 when this happened, old enough to think I was brave but young enough to still go trick-or-treating with my younger sister. It was Halloween night, 2009, in our quiet suburban neighborhood outside Portland. My parents let us go out alone for the first time that year, and we felt so grown up walking down those streets without them trailing behind us. The neighborhood was perfect for Halloween. Big old houses with wide front porches, tall trees that looked like skeletons against the orange streetlights, and everyone went all out with decorations. We had our route planned. Start at the top of Maple Street, work our way down, then loop back through the side streets before heading home. Everything was normal for the first hour. We hit all the good houses, the ones that gave out full-size candy bars, and our pillowcases were getting heavy. The streets were packed with kids in costumes, parents standing in groups on sidewalks, porch lights glowing everywhere. It felt safe. It felt like every Halloween should feel. Then we turned onto Birch Lane. It was one of the older streets, where the houses sat farther back from the road and the trees grew thicker overhead. The streetlights seemed dimmer there, and fewer kids were walking around. My sister Emma wanted to skip it and head back to the main streets, but I noticed one house at the end of the block that still had its porch light on. Most of the houses on Birch Lane were dark. People either weren't home or weren't participating. But this one house, a two-story colonial with peeling white paint and overgrown hedges, had a single yellow bulb burning above the front door. The rest of the house was completely dark. No decorations, no jack-o'-lanterns, nothing. Just that one light cutting through the darkness. I told Emma we should check it out. She didn't want to. She said the house looked creepy and we already had enough candy. But I was stubborn, and I was older, and I convinced her it would be fine. Just one more house, then we'd head home. We walked up the cracked driveway. Dead leaves covered the front yard, and I could hear them crunching under our sneakers. The porch light flickered once as we approached, and Emma grabbed my arm. I told her it was probably just a bad bulb. Old houses had old wiring, nothing to worry about. The porch steps creaked under our weight. Up close, I could see the paint wasn't just peeling, it was rotting in places. The windows on either side of the door were covered with heavy curtains, and I couldn't see any light or movement inside. But the porch light was on, which meant someone was home. That was the rule, right? Porch light on means come knock. I pressed the doorbell. It made a muffled buzzing sound inside, like it was broken or dying. We waited. Nothing happened. Emma tugged on my sleeve and said we should leave. I told her to wait a little longer. Sometimes people took a while to answer, especially old people. After what felt like a full minute, I knocked. 3 solid raps on the wooden door. The sound echoed weird, like the house was mostly empty inside. We waited again. Still nothing. I was about to agree with Emma that we should go when I heard footsteps. They were slow and heavy, coming from somewhere deep in the house. Each step creaked on what sounded like old floorboards. They weren't moving toward the door in a straight line. They stopped and started, moved sideways, stopped again. It sounded like whoever was inside was wandering around, not walking with any purpose. Emma whispered that we should leave right now. I was starting to agree with her, but before I could move, the porch light went out, just clicked off, leaving us standing there in complete darkness. The only light came from a distant street lamp half a block away, and it barely reached the porch. I grabbed Emma's hand and turned to leave. That's when the door opened. Not all the way, just a crack, maybe 6 inches wide. I couldn't see who opened it because the inside of the house was pitch black. No lights, no shapes, nothing. Just darkness and a small opening. Nobody spoke. We stood there frozen, staring at that dark gap. I could hear breathing from inside, slow and raspy. Emma's hand was squeezing mine so hard it hurt. I managed to say the words trick or treat, but my voice came out shaky and quiet. The breathing continued. Then a hand emerged from the darkness. It was pale, almost gray in the dim light, with long fingers and dirty fingernails. The hand held a small paper bag, the kind you'd pack a lunch in. It extended toward us, trembling slightly, like whoever was holding it was very old or very weak. I didn't want to take it. Every instinct told me to run, but I was raised to be polite, and some stupid part of my brain said it would be rude to just leave. So I reached out and took the bag. The hand withdrew immediately, and the door slammed shut so hard it made both of us jump. The porch light came back on. We were standing there, alone, and I was holding this crumpled paper bag. Emma was already backing down the steps, pulling me with her. I shoved the bag in my pillowcase, and we ran. We didn't stop running until we were back on the main street, surrounded by other kids and parents and bright porch lights. When we got home, my mom asked if we had fun. We said yes, and went straight upstairs to sort our candy. Emma dumped hers on her bed and started trading with me, but I couldn't stop thinking about that paper bag. I pulled it out and set it on my desk. It was wrinkled and stained, folded over at the top. Emma told me not to open it. She said we should just throw it away, but curiosity won. I unfolded the top and looked inside. There were 3 things in the bag: an old photograph, a rusty key, and a small piece of paper with an address written on it in shaky handwriting. The photograph was faded and bent at the corners. It showed 2 young girls standing in front of the same house we'd just visited. They were wearing old-fashioned dresses, and they weren't smiling. The photo looked like it was from the 1960 seconds or earlier. I turned it over. On the back, someone had written 2 names in pencil: Sarah and Margaret. The key was small and iron, the kind that might open an old padlock or a jewelry box. It was covered in spots of rust and felt cold in my hand. The piece of paper had an address on Birch Lane, the same street, but it was a different house number, 3 houses down from the one we'd visited. Emma was freaking out. She wanted to tell our parents, but I convinced her to wait. I said we'd figure it out first. Looking back, that was stupid. We should have told someone immediately. But I was 13 and thought I could handle it. The next day after school, I rode my bike back to Birch Lane. I told myself I just wanted to see the house in daylight, to prove it wasn't as creepy as it seemed at night. The street looked different during the day, quieter. Most of the houses had cars in the driveways and looked normal, but the white colonial still looked abandoned. The grass was taller than I remembered, and one of the shutters was hanging crooked. I rode past it slowly, then continued down to the address written on the paper. That house was smaller, a brick ranch style, with a neat lawn and a minivan in the driveway. It looked completely normal. I sat there on my bike, staring at it, trying to figure out what the connection was. An old woman came out the front door. She was carrying grocery bags and walking toward the minivan. I almost rode away, but she noticed me and waved. She asked if I was lost. I said no. Then, without really planning it, I asked her if she knew anything about the White House down the street. Her expression changed immediately. She set down the grocery bags and walked closer to me. She asked why I wanted to know. I told her about Halloween night, about the paper bag and the photograph. Her face went pale. She told me to wait and went back inside her house. When she came back out, she was carrying a photo album. She opened it to a page and showed me a picture. It was the same 2 girls from the photograph in the bag, but this picture was taken later. They were teenagers, standing in front of the brick ranch house, where we were standing now. The old woman said those were her older sisters, Sarah and Margaret. They both died in 1967. My stomach dropped. I asked how they died. She said they were murdered on Halloween night. Someone broke into their house while they were home alone. The police never found who did it. The family moved away afterward, but she came back years later and bought the old house because she wanted to feel close to them. I asked about the white colonial. The woman's expression darkened. She said, a man used to live there, someone the police questioned, but never arrested. There wasn't enough evidence. He lived alone and died in the early 2000s. The house had been empty ever since. Nobody wanted to buy it because of its history. I felt sick. I asked if anyone else lived there now. She said no. The house had been vacant for years. The power was shut off. The water was disconnected. Nobody had been inside it for a long time. I told her about the porch light, about the door opening, about the hand. She stared at me for a long moment, then told me I must be mistaken. There was no way anyone was in that house, but I knew what I saw. We both did. That door opened. That hand reached out. Something gave us that bag. I thanked the woman and rode home as fast as I could. When I got there, I went straight to my room and grabbed the paper bag. I wanted to throw everything away, but something stopped me. Instead, I put the photograph, the key, and the paper, with the address in an envelope, and mailed it anonymously to the address on Birch Lane, to the old woman. I never told anyone else about it. Emma and I agreed never to talk about it again. We never went back to Birch Lane. The next Halloween, my parents took us to a different neighborhood entirely. A few years later, I heard the white colonial was finally torn down. The lot stayed empty. I'm 28 now. I still think about that night sometimes. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was squatting in the house. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe the old woman was wrong about the power being shut off. But none of those explanations feel right. I remember that cold hand. I remember the darkness inside that house. And I remember the way the door slammed shut, like something was angry we'd disturbed it. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd opened the door wider, if I'd looked inside. Part of me is glad I didn't. Part of me wishes I had, just so I'd know for sure. But mostly, I'm just glad we left when we did. I don't think we were meant to be there. And whatever was in that house, I don't think it was handing out candy. I was 16 when this happened, which meant I was technically too old for trick-or-treating, but young enough that my friends and I didn't care. It was Halloween 2014, and we decided to do one last year before we all got too cool for it. There were 4 of us: me, Jake, Brittany, and Marcus. We lived in a mid-sized town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and nothing really bad ever happened. We planned to hit the rich neighborhood across town, the one with massive houses and the parents who gave out king-size candy bars. We all wore simple costumes because we weren't trying that hard. I was wearing a black hoodie with a plastic skeleton mask. Jake had a gorilla suit, Brittany was a vampire, and Marcus wore a hockey mask and carried a fake machete. The night started great. The weather was perfect, cold but not freezing, and the streets were packed with families. We filled our bags fast and were joking around, taking photos, having a good time. Around 8:30, most of the younger kids started heading home, and the streets got quieter. That's when we decided to explore some of the side streets we'd never been down before. We turned onto a street called Ashwood Drive. The houses there were older, not as well maintained as the main neighborhood. Some had lights on, some didn't. We went up to a few doors and got some candy, nothing unusual. Then we came to a house that stood out because of its decorations. The yard was covered in fake tombstones, cobwebs, and plastic skeletons. There were fog machines running, and orange lights illuminated the front porch. A scarecrow sat in a rocking chair by the door, and there was a sign that said, "Enter if you dare." It looked like someone had spent serious money on the setup. We figured they'd have good candy, so we walked up. As we got closer, I noticed the scarecrow. It was really detailed, wearing old farmer clothes and a burlap sack over its head. The clothes looked genuinely old and dirty, not costume store stuff. Its hands were pale and realistic, with dirt under the fingernails. I remember thinking it was an impressive prop. We walked onto the porch, and Jake rang the doorbell. We heard it chime inside. While we waited, Brittany pointed at the scarecrow and said it was creepy how real it looked. Marcus agreed and stepped closer to it. He said he thought he could see it breathing. We all laughed and told him he was seeing things. But then I looked too, and I swear I saw the chest move slightly. Before anyone could say anything else, the front door opened. A woman stood there, probably in her 50s, wearing normal clothes. She smiled at us and complimented our costumes. She held out a bowl of candy and told us to take as much as we wanted. We each grabbed a handful, thanked her, and started to leave. That's when she said something weird. She looked directly at Marcus and said his costume was perfect, but he needed to be careful. Marcus laughed and asked what she meant. She said there was someone else in the neighborhood wearing the same costume, and she'd seen him earlier. She said this other person's costume was so realistic it scared her, and we should be careful if we ran into him. We thanked her again and left. As we walked down the driveway, Jake joked about there being another Jason Voorhees running around. Marcus said maybe they could have a machete fight. We were all laughing about it when Brittany suddenly stopped walking. She was staring back at the house. We asked what was wrong, and she said the scarecrow had moved. We all turned around. The scarecrow was still in the rocking chair, but now its head was tilted in a different direction. It was facing us, watching us leave. Jake said we probably just remembered it wrong, that it had been facing that way the whole time, but I knew he was lying because I specifically remembered it facing the door when we arrived. Marcus said we should get out of there. We all agreed and walked faster. As we reached the end of the driveway, I looked back one more time. The scarecrow was standing up. It wasn't in the chair anymore. It was standing on the porch, completely still, facing our direction. I told everyone to look, but by the time they turned around, it was sitting again. Nobody believed me. They said I was trying to scare them, and it wasn't funny, but I knew what I saw. That thing had been standing. We kept walking, and I tried to convince myself it was a prank, maybe someone in a costume messing with trick-or-treaters. That had to be it. That's what I kept telling myself. We continued down Ashwood Drive and turned onto another side street. There were fewer houses with lights on here, and we were starting to think about heading back to the main area. That's when we saw someone walking toward us from the opposite direction. At first, it looked like another trick or treater, but as they got closer, we realized they were wearing the same costume as Marcus. Hockey mask, dark, clothes, carrying a machete. Marcus joked that it was his twin. Jake said we should walk past them and keep going. But as we got closer, something felt wrong. The person's movements were too stiff, too deliberate. They weren't walking like a teenager out having fun. They were walking with purpose, and they were staring at us. The hockey mask had dark eye holes, and I couldn't see anything behind them. We passed them on the sidewalk. Nobody said anything. The person turned their head to watch us as we walked by, but they didn't stop moving. I could feel their eyes on us, tracking us. When we were about 20 feet past them, Brittany whispered that something was seriously wrong with that person. She said their clothes looked old and dirty, and the machete looked too real. We all turned around to look. The person had stopped walking. They were standing in the middle of the street, facing us, just standing there, completely still. The street was empty except for us and them. The nearest porch light was half a block away. Everything was quiet. Jake said we should go, right now. We started walking faster. When we looked back again, the person was closer. Not walking, just closer, like they'd teleported forward several feet. Marcus said we needed to run. We didn't argue. We took off. I don't know if the person chased us. I didn't look back. We ran for 3 blocks before we stopped in front of a house with a bunch of parents standing in the yard. We were all breathing hard, trying to act normal. The parents asked if we were okay, and we said we were fine, just racing each other. We stayed near that house for a few minutes, catching our breath and watching the street. The person in the hockey mask never appeared. After a while, we convinced ourselves we'd overreacted. Maybe it was just someone committed to their costume. Maybe we'd freaked ourselves out over nothing. We decided to head home. We took the main streets, staying where there were lots of people and lights. Everything seemed fine until we were about 2 blocks from Marcus's house. That's when we saw the scarecrow again. It was standing on the sidewalk ahead of us, perfectly still, wearing the same farmer clothes and burlap sack. We stopped walking. There was no way it was the same scarecrow. That house was over a mile away. But it looked identical. Same clothes, same pose, same tilted head. It was just standing there in the middle of the sidewalk, blocking our path. A car drove past, and its headlights illuminated the figure for a moment. In that light, I could see the burlap sack move slightly, like something was breathing underneath it. Jake said we should cross the street and go around. We did. We walked on the opposite side, keeping our distance, not taking our eyes off it. The scarecrow didn't move. It just stood there, head tilted, watching us. When we were about half a block past it, I made the mistake of looking back. The scarecrow was walking now, not fast, but steady, following, dust down the sidewalk. We ran again. This time we didn't stop until we reached Marcus's house. His parents were home, and we rushed inside. They asked what was wrong, and we made up some excuse about older kids hassling us. Marcus's dad said he'd drive everyone home, and we didn't argue. We piled into his car and locked the doors. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked out the back window. The scarecrow was standing at the end of Marcus's street, lit by a street lamp, just standing there, watching. I didn't say anything to the others. I don't think they saw it. Marcus's dad drove us all home, and I remember feeling relieved when I finally got inside my house and locked the door. The next day, I texted everyone asking if they wanted to talk about what happened. Nobody did. We all agreed to pretend it was nothing, just pranks and our imaginations. But I know what I saw. And a week later, There was a news story about a break-in on Ashwood Drive, the same street where we'd been. Someone had broken into a house around midnight on Halloween. The homeowners weren't hurt, but they said they woke up to find someone standing in their bedroom doorway, wearing a hockey mask and holding something sharp. By the time they screamed, the person was gone. The police never found who did it. The homeowners said the intruder didn't take anything. They just stood there, watching, like they were practicing, or looking for someone specific. I never told anyone about what we saw that night. I'm 25 now, and I still think about it. About the scarecrow that moved, about the person who followed us, about how both of them wore costumes that looked too real. Sometimes I wonder if they were the same person, if someone was watching us that whole night, changing costumes, messing with us. Or maybe it was two people working together. I don't know, but I know we were being hunted, and I know we were lucky to make it home. I haven't been trick or treating since. I probably never will again. I was 10 years old, and it was my first time trick or treating without my parents following me. My mom said I could go with my best friend Tyler and his older brother Chris, who was 14. She made Chris promise to keep an eye on us, and he agreed. This was October 31st, 2008, in a small town in Massachusetts. We started trick-or-treating around 6 when it was still light out. I was dressed as a pirate, Tyler was a ninja, and Chris wore a zombie costume with really good makeup. The plan was to hit our street first, then move into the neighborhoods near the elementary school where the houses were closer together and you could get more candy faster. Everything was normal at first. We went door to door, said trick or treat, got our candy. The streets were full of kids and parents. I remember feeling so independent and grown up. My mum had given me a watch and told me to be home by 8:30. I checked it constantly, proud that I was responsible enough to keep track of time. Around 7:15, we were on Willow Street near the school. That's when I first noticed the man with the camera. He was standing on the sidewalk about half a block away, holding a large video camera up to his face. The kind of camera parents used back then to record their kids, big and black with a flip-out screen. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Lots of parents were taking photos and videos of their kids in costumes, but then I noticed he wasn't moving. All the other parents walked with their kids, talking to them, going door to door. This man just stood in one spot, camera pointed in our direction. I couldn't see his face behind the camera. He was wearing dark clothes, jeans, and a jacket, and he was tall, really tall. I pointed him out to Tyler. Tyler looked and shrugged, said it was probably someone's dad. But something about it bothered me. I kept walking, but I looked back every few seconds. The man was following us, not walking right behind us, but maintaining the same distance, always about half a block back, camera always up, always pointing at us. We went to 3 more houses. Each time I looked back, the man was there. Same distance, same camera position. I told Chris, and he looked annoyed. He said I was being paranoid, and we should just focus on getting candy. But I saw him glance back too, and I could tell he noticed it. We turned onto a different street. I looked back at the corner, and the man turned too. He was still following us. Tyler started to notice now. He asked why that guy kept filming us. Chris said maybe he was making a documentary or something about Halloween, but his voice didn't sound confident anymore. We went to 4 more houses. The man stayed behind us the whole time. When we walked, he walked. When we stopped, he stopped. The camera never lowered. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel them watching us. I started walking faster. Tyler was scared now too. He kept asking Chris if we should go home. Chris said we were fine, but I could tell he was worried. He suggested we cross the street and see what the man did. We crossed. The man crossed too, still filming, still keeping that exact same distance. Other trick-or-treaters were on the street, but the man only seemed interested in us. His camera never pointed at anyone else. A woman walking her kids stopped us and asked if we knew that man. She said she'd noticed him following us for the last few blocks. Chris lied and said he thought it was his uncle. The woman looked skeptical but didn't push it. She told us to be careful and walked away with her children. That's when I knew we needed to leave. I told Chris we should go home now. Tyler agreed. Chris looked back at the man one more time, then nodded. He said we'd head back toward our street. We started walking faster, not quite running but close. I looked back. The man was matching our pace, still filming, still exactly half a block behind us. We turned onto a street that would lead us back, toward home. There were fewer people here, fewer porch lights on. I looked back again. The man was closer now, maybe 30 feet behind us instead of half a block. He'd closed the distance when we weren't paying attention. The camera was still up, still recording. Chris told us to walk faster. We did. When I looked back again, the man was even closer. He was walking faster too, deliberately keeping pace with us. Now I could see more details. His jacket was dark blue or black. His jeans had dirt on them. He was wearing work boots. But I still couldn't see his face behind that camera. Tyler started to cry. He asked Chris why the man wouldn't stop following us. Chris didn't answer. He grabbed both our hands and told us we were going to run to the next street, where there was a gas station with lights and people. On 3, he counted, and we ran. I'd never run so fast in my life. My plastic candy bucket banged against my leg, and I could hear Tyler's breathing next to me. Chris pulled us forward, almost dragging us. I didn't look back. I was too scared to look back. But I could hear footsteps behind us, heavy and fast, getting closer. We reached the gas station and ran inside. The clerk looked up, startled. Chris asked if we could stay inside for a minute. The clerk saw our faces and agreed immediately. He asked if something was wrong. Chris said someone was following us. The clerk came around the counter and looked out the window. The man was standing in the parking lot, just standing there under the fluorescent lights, camera still up, still pointed at the windows. The clerk's expression changed. He asked if we knew him. We said no. The clerk told us to stay inside and picked up the phone. He said he was calling the police. That's when the man lowered the camera. For the first time, I could see his face. He was older, maybe 50 or 60, with grey hair and a completely blank expression. He wasn't smiling or frowning. He just stared at us through the window with empty eyes. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark between streetlights. The clerk cancelled the call to the police. He said the man was gone and asked if we wanted him to call our parents instead. Chris said yes. My mom arrived 10 minutes later, and she was terrified. Chris explained what happened, and she immediately called Tyler's parents and the police. They came and took a statement. We described the man as best we could. Tall, grey hair, dark clothes, big video camera. The police officer said they'd patrol the area and look for anyone matching that description. He asked if the man had touched us or spoken to us. We said no. He'd just followed us and filmed us. The officer's expression was serious. He said we did the right thing by going to a public place and getting help. He told our parents to keep us inside for the rest of the night. When we got home, my mom called Tyler's parents again to make sure they got home safe. Then she locked all the doors and windows. She asked me questions about the man, but I didn't have many answers. I hadn't seen his face until those last few seconds. I couldn't describe him in detail. Just tall, grey hair, blank expression, camera always up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the man standing in that parking lot, staring at us. About how long he'd followed us. About what he was doing with that video. My mom let me sleep in her room. She said the police were looking for him and it would be okay. But she looked scared too. The next day, our neighbors were talking about it. Someone else had seen a man matching that description on a different street, also filming children. The police increased patrols and warned parents to be vigilant, but they never found him. No one reported seeing him after Halloween night. It was like he vanished. 2 weeks later, my mom got a phone call from the police. They'd found a tape. Someone had dropped off a VHS tape at the police station, with no note, no explanation. The tape contained footage from Halloween night. Hours of footage. Different children, different streets, all filmed from a distance. The police recognized Tyler, Chris, and me in some of the footage. We were on that tape for almost 20 minutes. Just us, going door to door, walking down streets, completely unaware we were being filmed. The police said they were trying to identify the other children on the tape to notify their parents. They were also trying to figure out who dropped it off and why. My mum asked if they could trace where the tape came from or identify the person filming. The detective said the tape was clean, no fingerprints, and the person had worn gloves when handling it. They had no leads. That was 14 years ago. The police never identified the man. The case went cold. My mom kept me inside for months after that, only letting me play in our yard where she could see me. When I finally went back to school, she drove me every day even though we lived 3 blocks away. She never said it directly, but I knew she was terrified. I'm 24 now. I've tried to forget about it, but sometimes I still think about that man. About the camera pointed at us for all those blocks. About his empty expression when he finally lowered it. About the fact that he filmed us for 20 minutes, and we never knew until it was almost too late. I wonder where that footage is now. I wonder what he wanted it for. And I wonder if he's still out there, still filming, still following other children who don't know he's watching. I don't let my younger cousins go trick-or-treating without adults anymore. When people ask why I'm so overprotective, I don't explain. I just say it's not safe. Because I know what's out there. I know there are people who watch and follow and collect footage for reasons we'll never understand, and I know how lucky we were to make it home that night. How lucky we were that he only followed us, that he didn't do more. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if he's still watching somehow, if he kept that footage, if he still has those 20 minutes of us walking door to door, completely unaware we were being hunted. That thought keeps me up more than I'd like to admit, because the scariest part wasn't the following. It was the fact that we never knew. We never felt the eyes on us until it was almost too late. And that terrifies me more than anything.